Hello friends, I am Chevee. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? I hope it's all good and great and fantastic. How was your weekend? Did you do anything exciting? Did you get to hang out with friends? Did you play any games? Did you go anywhere? Did you do anything, boring that you really wanted to do and loved doing? Let me know in the comments. I did all of those things. Yeah, I went place. I saw friends. I mean, if you consider my children and M as my friends, which they're my best friends, they're the people that I spend the most time with. Yeah. I also played games, and I want to tell you about the games that I've been playing, but I have this gaming channel that I'm not using that much, and I really need to. I like talking to you about games because I know that most of you found me through games, and but I think in general, like game discussion review type stuff, not necessarily reviews, but just discussion about the games I've been playing and what I think of them. I think I want to put that on the gaming channel. I need to use that channel more, and I need to really get inspired to do more review type stuff over there. So we'll talk about games over there, but I did play, I started to play Sleeping Gods from Ryan Lockett and Red Raven Games, and I'm already in love, so I'll tell you that. But I went somewhere this weekend, and that is to a place in Pittsburgh called Kennywood, which is an amusement park, roller coasters and all that sort of stuff. And it turned out to be the perfect day for that. It turned out to be like right around 70 degrees. There was only maybe 1,000 people in the park. It was empty. I mean, we got to ride all of the rides we wanted to ride, like over and over again. Like just back to back. We could get on, get off, get right back on the ride kind of thing. That was awesome because usually I haven't been to Kennywood for at least a decade, maybe longer, and it used to be you would go in the summer. It was always a summer destination, and there would be 10,000, 20,000 people in the park, and you would wait an hour to get on a ride. Saturday we waited maybe 10 minutes on a couple of rides, but for the most part it was just like get right on. It was awesome. It was really, really good, and we stayed there the entire. They were open from like 10:30 to 7. We were there the entire time, and we had a blast. But more importantly, for me, and this is going to sound really crappy because because Em asked me what my favorite ride was, and I said it was the cart ride. The cart ride was my favorite ride. It's about maybe 2 hours, a little less than 2 hours to get there from here, like hour 45. So I had about 4 hours in a car on Saturday, and boy, was that good. After having my Viking game rejected from the publisher that was reviewing it on Friday, and thinking about that some, and then getting to spend 4 solid just thinking hours about it during that car ride, really resolved a lot of things in my head. And what came out of that, I believe, is I don't want to say an entirely different game. I told him I'm going to throw the game away and start over, and that's kind of true. But the gist of it is still there. The dice are the thing that are going to be, they're going to be maintained. How do I talk about this? So the idea, what has become Northern Saga started in the late 90s in Hawaii. And it started with an idea of, what if I took Magic the Gathering, and instead of lands, you had dice, and you rolled those dice, and those were your resources that you had to use for the turn, and you had to figure out how to use those to do things. And I started working on that game then, like in 99, 2000, somewhere around there. So it's been over 20 years I've been working on some version of this idea. And I quickly realized it doesn't work, because basically, in Magic you have 5 land types. You very rarely ever build a deck with all 5. You mostly build 2. So when you're rolling these dice and you get all these wilds, it doesn't really work, and then the game stalls. And so the first version of the game that I thought was playable was called Monarchy, and it was there was a deck of cards that was central. Everybody was drawing these cards, and you would roll dice to try to play these. And I think at that time I had 4 resources. I had like copper, silver, gold, jewel, and then I had dice for drawing cards and dice for stealing cards from opponents. and so, or sides. So each die, you didn't, there was no inherent draw. You had to roll draws, and at that time it was basically roll dice with 2 rerolls. So it was a Yahtzee style game. Roll dice, then you could reroll twice, and then you're trying to play these cards from your hand with whatever you rolled. And the cards from hand would give you special powers if you played more than one. So when you played the first one, it didn't give you anything. When you played the second one, it would unlock some sort of special power, which might, help you convert dice into other things. And that game worked, but it made no sense. It was still just rolling dice and just dealing with randomness. And from that point forward, it became all sorts of different things. I've had medieval versions of it. I've had Viking versions of it. I've had post-apocalyptic versions of it. I've had industrial versions of it. I've had microprocessor versions of it. I've tried so many ways to make this dice and cards mechanic work. And the problem is it's just freaking slow, right? You're rolling these dice. You're not getting what you want. So unlike a production engine game where you know what you're going to get because you set that production. You used some game mechanic to gain a production value so that you could do a thing. Your turns are very snappy. But in this game, you're rolling dice and then like, okay, what do I have? How can I use that to do this? I really want to do this. Do I have it? Nope. So I have to find a secondary thing. And there's a whole lot of decision space that is not intuitive, right? In one of the early versions of the City Builder version, it was just D6s, and you used those to buy cards that you then used to pay for things, right? So there was like 5 or 6 different types of workers. You were buying farmers and builders and whatever. And so they were in a display, and you were putting your resources on those, and then as soon as you filled one up, you took it. And so it was a competitive race to like, oh, I want this farmer. And so I put a couple of resources there. Hopefully you don't get it on your turn, and then on my turn I can take it, and then I get that card, and then what do I do with it? And that was even slower than what I have right now. So this game was born out of all of that. And the version that I showed Mayfair in 2013 or 2014 was just a deck of cards and dice. You were rolling these dice to get these cards into play. There was also blessings, which are like kind of a consolation prize. Basically, any die that you don't use, you could get a blessing with, and blessings were rerolls, and they were also like a scoring mechanism. And then I also added silver, and so silver was the only persistent thing that you kept. So when you rolled silver, you got a silver, and then you kept that. So you had silver, you had blessings, you had cards that you were trying to play, and that was the game that I showed Mayfair and the game that they loved. But ultimately, none of those have worked, and I think the main reason is, and one of the things that the publisher called out in their rejection was that none of these resources do anything inherently. Not that they need to, it's just there's no inherent value. In the game, there's currently food, leather, wood, and stone. And those things are all used to build buildings, but they're also used to buy other things. But none of those 4 things have any sort of inherent property. So there's no, like, I want leather because I'm going for this strategy, or I want stone because I'm going for this strategy. That doesn't exist. It only exists later in the game as you have purchased certain powers that let you unlock, I can turn anything into leather, which means that now leather is important to me, or leather is more, I have more ability to gain leather, so is there any other scoring mechanism card that I could go purchase that would help me use my leather to get points, or something like that? And so, one of the suggestions from them was to start with something. So start with a draft of some kind so that we have some sort of asymmetric setup, so that we have some sort of something that I'm going for. So I need to have these 4 resources. That's what I'm trying to get. I can do a little bit of conversion swap, that sort of thing. But ultimately, it's still going to come down to these dice there's nothing that you're trying to do with them other than build the cards that are in front of you. They have very personal meaning. So those 4 resources have very personal meaning. There's no global meaning to them. And so what I've realized is that all just needs to go away. Right now, there's silver, which you use to buy ships, and then ships go on this board, and then based on our positions on the board and how much strength we have at each location, we could raid, which is how I get new cards. It's all crap, right? And I think what I have to do is I have to assign some sort of default meaning to these resources. So, for instance, stone is what's used to build monuments, and monuments gain you blessings, right? Wood is used to build buildings specifically, like that's a building thing. Wood, leather and food are used to gain people, and people give you other game-breaking abilities. Leather is also used for buildings. So what I came up with in my head and the car was more of a roll and write game without the writing part. It's more of a roll and build game where you're rolling dice and you have a few options. You have this stone track which you can use to gain monuments, which gets you blessings, which gets you victory points. You have these people which you can purchase or hire to be able to manipulate other portions of the game, or also just to mitigate the randomness of the dice. And then you have the buildings, but there's not going to be this rating. Like, you're just going to be able to buy cards from a display. You'll spend a silver in a wood because that's what it takes to buy a boat, and you'll just take a card. And so I'm going to cut a whole lot of the game out, a whole lot of it. I'm going to gut it. And I think what I'm going to come up with at the end is a game with dice that makes a lot more sense why the dice are there. Right now, the dice are there just to fuck with you. They're there just to make your life miserable. And you have to figure out how to make the best out of your roll. And I would much rather have dice that give you interesting choices. And I think that's where I failed all these years. The dice didn't give you interesting choices. Your unique scenario gave you interesting choices. And honestly, those choices weren't really that interesting. Like, it was just making the best out of the worst, right? This is the garbage that I've been dealt. How do I make something out of that? As opposed to, I want this. This is what I'm trying to do. So how do I convert what I've got now into that and really focus on that? That's what I have to do. And I think I have a path. At least I have the start of one. So the game's going to change dramatically yet again. Right now, I am what I consider the current iteration of the game is the 4th iteration of the Viking theme. I will be on the 5th iteration of the Viking theme, which will be approximately the 19th version of the game. And it's going to be a very different thing, but it's also extremely distant from that roll dice, play monarchs. Extremely distant. So I'm okay with that. And sometimes you just have to be okay with throwing out the baby and the bathwater. Just toss it all and start over. The only thing I want to keep is this stupid dice. I want to make these stupid dice work. I just have to give them meaning. That's the revelation I had on Saturday. It was a good day. I felt really good about all of the notes I have now. I have a lot of great notes. But to be fair to the original design, to be fair what I have currently, once I get it back in my possession, I have a whole bunch of notes to test and see if what is in my head, right, for that version, I want to see how that works. And if it works, maybe I'll keep working on that version. But the new version, I think, is going to be a much better foundation that I can build on later. So I kind of have a fork right now, and I have to pick one. But first I have to design both of them. That's where we're at. Anyway, I'm going to try to record some gameplay discussion type stuff on the other channel. It'll probably just be more talky like this, but about games specifically. So make sure you check that out later in the week. I don't know when those videos will go up. Thank you for being here as always. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, being amazing friends and wonderful people. I really appreciate you. And I'll see you again tomorrow. Today's word you should know to sound smart is hyperbaric. It is an adjective meaning related to artificial high atmospheric pressure used to treat certain diseases. Divers who ascend to the surface too rapidly may be placed in a hyperbaric chamber to prevent the bends. Hyperbaric, Hyperbaric. When you take diving classes, one of the bends is one of the most drilled into you ideas. If you dive deeper than, I want to say, something like 30 feet, you're supposed to ascend like 15 feet every 30 seconds, or something like that. So you would come up 15 feet, you'd wait, come up 15 feet, wait, come up 15 feet, wait. I think that's how it works. It's been a very, very long time since I've dived, scubaed. I don't know.